The observation. The galactic assembly chamber floated in the darkness between stars, a massive structure built from materials harvested across 1,000 worlds. Inside its transparent walls, representatives from 47 species gathered for their monthly session. Today's discussion focused on a topic that had puzzled them for nearly 3 decades. Earth Ambassador Torn of the Vexari Empire stood at the central platform. His tall frame cast long shadows across the chamber floor as he gestured toward the holographic display showing a small blue planet. His species had dominated galactic politics for 2 centuries, and his voice carried the weight of that authority. "Distinguished members," Torn began, his voice resonating through translation devices worn by every delegate. "We face an unusual situation. The humans of Earth achieved faster-than-light capability 28 years ago, yet they have made no attempt to contact us or expand beyond their immediate solar system." Counselor Mira of the Selenian Collective leaned forward in her seat. Her silver skin reflected the light from nearby stars as she spoke. "Perhaps they are simply primitive. Many species take centuries to develop confidence for deep space exploration." "That was our initial assessment," Torn replied. "However, our monitoring stations have detected something disturbing. The humans possess technology that should not exist at their development stage. Their computational systems surpass anything we have seen outside the core worlds. Their materials science suggests understanding of quantum mechanics that even we struggle with." A murmur rippled through the chamber. High Priest Kalor of the Draenor Ascendancy raised one of his 4 arms. "If they possess such capability, why do they remain silent?" "Every species in galactic history has reached out upon achieving light-speed travel. It is natural curiosity." Ambassador Torn manipulated the holographic display, showing dozens of human vessels scattered throughout their solar system. Each ship appeared functional but unremarkable. Simple designs, basic weapons, standard propulsion, nothing that should concern an advanced galactic civilization. "That is precisely what troubles us," Torn said quietly. "They appear to be watching and waiting. Our psychological experts suggest this behavior indicates either extreme caution or careful calculation. Neither option is comforting." Commander Zex of the Korthan Military Alliance stood abruptly. His armored body gleamed under the chamber lights as he spoke with typical military directness. "Then we make first contact. We approach with overwhelming force and make our superiority clear. They will submit like every other species has submitted." Several delegates voiced agreement, but Counselor Mira raised her hand for silence. "And if they do not submit?" "If their silence indicates preparation rather than fear." "Preparation for what?" Zex challenged. "They have fewer than 200 ships. We command fleets numbering in the thousands. Their weapons are primitive projectiles and simple energy beams. We have planet-destroying capabilities. What could they possibly prepare that would concern us?" Torn studied the human vessels on the display with growing unease. Something about their positioning bothered him. They were not distributed randomly. Each ship occupied a location that provided optimal observation of assembly space, almost as if they were deliberately watching specific targets. "I propose we send a diplomatic mission," Torn announced. "A small delegation to make formal contact and invite Earth to join the assembly under our guidance. We will demonstrate our power and generosity. They will understand their place in the galactic order." The vote passed unanimously. Within hours, an assembly delegation departed for Earth. Ambassador Torn led the mission personally, accompanied by military escorts and diplomatic staff from a dozen species. They traveled in the Celestial Harmony, a vessel designed to inspire awe in less advanced civilizations. The journey took 3 weeks. During that time, Torn reviewed everything known about humans. They were bipedal mammals from a world with considerable biodiversity. Their history showed remarkable brutality, with countless wars spanning thousands of years. Only in recent centuries had they achieved global cooperation. "They are warriors by nature," his military advisor reported. "But their conflicts have always been among themselves. They have no experience with alien civilizations or interstellar warfare." Torn nodded, but his unease continued growing. The humans had known about the assembly for nearly 3 decades. They had certainly detected assembly monitoring stations near their system, yet they had never attempted communication or shown any response to assembly presence. The Celestial Harmony emerged from light-speed travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Immediately, Torn's communications officer looked up with surprise. "Ambassador, we are receiving a transmission. The humans are hailing us already." Torn frowned. They had barely arrived, yet somehow the humans had detected them instantly. Put it through. A woman's face appeared on the main screen. She appeared to be in her middle years, with dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to assess everything they touched. She wore simple clothing without military insignia or ceremonial decoration. "Welcome to our solar system," the woman said in perfect Vexari, the Assembly's primary language. "I am Director Sarah Chen of Earth's External Relations Bureau. We have been expecting you." Torn struggled to hide his shock. The humans spoke Vexari? How had they learned the language without any official contact? "I am Ambassador Torn of the Galactic Assembly," he replied carefully. "We come in peace to extend an invitation for Earth to join our galactic community." Sarah smiled, but the expression did not reach her eyes. "We appreciate your visit, Ambassador. Please proceed to these coordinates." She transmitted docking information. "We have prepared appropriate facilities for our discussion." The transmission ended before Torn could respond. He looked at his staff with growing concern. Everything about this interaction felt wrong. The humans should have been surprised, frightened, or at least uncertain. Instead, they demonstrated perfect confidence and clear preparation. "Take us to the coordinates," Torn ordered. "But keep all defensive systems active." The designated location was a space station orbiting Earth's moon. The structure appeared modest compared to assembly architecture, but Torn noticed immediately that its defensive capabilities far exceeded what a young species should possess. Energy shields, point defense systems, and sensor arrays that could probably detect a ship across multiple star systems. "How did they build this without us noticing?" his military advisor whispered. Torn had no answer. The Assembly had monitored Earth for decades, yet somehow the humans had constructed this facility in complete secrecy. They docked without incident. Sarah Chen waited for them in a conference chamber that managed to be both simple and impressive. One entire wall displayed Earth below, a beautiful world of blue oceans and green continents. The other walls showed stars, giving the impression of floating in space itself. "Please, be seated." Sarah gestured to chairs that had been specifically designed for each species in the delegation. The humans had known exactly who would come and had prepared accordingly. Torn felt his composure slipping. Every detail suggested the humans knew far more than they should. "Director Chen," he began formally, "the Galactic Assembly welcomes Earth to the community of spacefaring civilizations. We offer membership in our organization, access to our trade networks, and protection under our military forces. In exchange, we ask only that Earth accepts Assembly authority in all matters of interstellar importance." Sarah listened politely, her expression neutral. When Torn finished, she folded her hands on the table. "Thank you for your generous offer, Ambassador. However, I must clarify several points. First, Earth does not require protection. We are quite capable of defending ourselves. Second, we have no intention of accepting any external authority over our affairs. And third, we are already part of the galactic community. We have been for quite some time." Torn felt his heart's racing. "I do not understand. You have made no formal contact with any assembly species." "Formal contact, no," Sarah agreed. "But we have been observing the assembly since we achieved light speed capability. We have monitored your communications, studied your technologies, and learned your languages. We know how the assembly operates, Ambassador Torn. We know its laws, its politics, and its methods of control." The chamber fell silent. Every delegate stared at the human woman with varying expressions of shock and anger. "You admit to spying on the assembly?" Commander Zex demanded, his hand moving toward his weapon. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. "We prefer to call it observation. When a species encounters an established galactic civilization, caution is logical. We needed to understand what we were dealing with before revealing ourselves." "And what did you conclude?" Torn asked quietly, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Sarah stood and walked to the window, showing Earth. "We concluded that the Galactic Assembly maintains order through intimidation and forced compliance. New species are given two choices: submit to Assembly authority or face economic isolation and military pressure. Those who resist are labeled dangerous and dealt with accordingly." She turned back to face them. "We also concluded that the Assembly's military superiority depends largely on technological advantages that are not as impressive as you believe. And most importantly, we concluded that the Assembly has grown complacent. You expect submission because you have never encountered a species that refused to be intimidated. Torn felt cold spreading through his body. This was the worst possible scenario. The humans had not been primitive or cautious. They had been preparing. Director Chen, I must warn you that defiance of the assembly carries serious consequences. We maintain galactic peace through our authority. Species that operate outside our structure threaten stability. Sarah returned to her seat, her calm never wavering. Then perhaps the assembly's structure needs to change. We propose an alternative: mutual respect between equals, transparent cooperation, and recognition that no single organization has the right to dictate terms to sovereign civilizations. Commander Zex stood abruptly, his armor clanking. This is unacceptable. The Assembly will not negotiate with a species that refuses proper respect. You will submit to our authority or face the consequences. Sarah looked at him with something resembling pity. Commander, I understand this is difficult for you. The Assembly has existed for over 1,000 years without serious challenge. But times change. Species evolve, and humanity has evolved with one critical advantage that none of you possess. And what is that? Torn asked, though he dreaded the answer. Sarah's smile returned, cold and knowing. We know how to wait. We know how to watch. And we know how to prepare for every possible outcome. You spent 3 decades monitoring Earth, believing you understood us. But we spent those same 3 decades studying you, learning your weaknesses, and building capabilities you never imagined we possessed. She activated a display that showed data streams flowing between Earth and dozens of locations throughout assembly space.
Every conversation in this chamber is monitored by 17 different assembly intelligence services.
But did you know that for the last 15 years, we have been monitoring all of them? Did you know that we can access your supposedly secure networks? Did you know that we have observation posts in 63 star systems watching everything you do? The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in their native languages, demanding explanations, denying possibilities, threatening consequences. But Torn simply stared at the human woman, who had just revealed that everything the Assembly believed about Earth was carefully constructed deception. How? He whispered. Sarah heard him despite the noise. Because we learned from history, Ambassador. Earth's nations spent centuries conquering and being conquered. We learned that the weak do not survive by being weak. They survive by appearing weak while building strength in secret. We learned that the first rule of survival is understanding your potential enemies better than they understand themselves. She stood and walked to the chamber entrance. This meeting is concluded. The Assembly has 48 hours to consider our proposal for restructuring galactic cooperation on equal terms. If you choose conflict instead, you will discover that humanity is far more dangerous than you ever imagined. We do not want war, Ambassador Torn, but we are prepared for it in ways that would terrify you if you truly understood. Sarah paused at the doorway and looked back at the stunned delegates. We have been watching you for 3 decades. We know every secret, every weakness, every fear. The question now is whether the Assembly is wise enough to accept partnership with a species that refuses to kneel. She left the chamber. The delegates sat in shocked silence, finally understanding that they had made a terrible miscalculation. Earth was not a primitive world waiting to be guided. It was a carefully concealed predator that had been studying its prey for decades, and now the predator had revealed itself. The revelation. Ambassador Torn remained in his seat long, after the other delegates had begun arguing among themselves. His mind raced through implications that grew more disturbing with each passing moment. The humans had been watching the Assembly for 3 decades. They had infiltrated supposedly impenetrable security systems. They had learned every language, studied every species, and positioned observation posts throughout assembly space without anyone noticing. Commander Zex slammed his fist on the table, silencing the chaos. This is an act of war. The humans have admitted to espionage against every assembly member. We should mobilize our fleets immediately and show them the consequences of such arrogance. Counselor Mira shook her head slowly. Her silver skin had paled considerably during Sarah's revelations. And what if she was telling the truth about their capabilities? What if we attack and discover they are prepared for exactly that response? Impossible, Zex declared. No species could hide advanced military capabilities from assembly surveillance. Our monitoring of Earth has been constant and thorough. Torn finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying weight. Our monitoring told us they had primitive ships and basic weapons. Yet they built a space station with defensive capabilities that rival our own military installations. Our intelligence said they knew nothing about us. Yet they speak our languages and access our networks. Commander, everything our surveillance told us was exactly what the humans wanted us to believe. The truth of those words settled over the chamber like a physical weight. High Priest Kalor rose from his seat, all four arms trembling slightly. If they have been watching us for 3 decades, they know everything. Our military deployments, our political divisions, our economic weaknesses. They know which species are unhappy with assembly leadership and which are looking for alternatives. Then we must act quickly, Zex insisted. Before they can exploit that knowledge, Torn activated his communication device. First, we need to verify their claims. If the humans have observation posts in 63 systems, we should be able to find them. He contacted Assembly Intelligence Command and relayed Sarah's statement. The response came within minutes. The intelligence director's face appeared on the screen, his expression showing barely controlled panic. Ambassador, we have been conducting emergency sweeps based on the humans' claims. So far, we have located 41 unidentified observation platforms in assembly space. They are small, heavily shielded, and designed to avoid detection. We estimate they have been operational for between 8 and 15 years. The chamber fell silent again. 41 confirmed platforms meant the humans had been telling the truth. And if they were honest about that, what else had they been honest about? There is more, the intelligence director continued. We have been analyzing our secure networks. We found evidence of unauthorized access dating back almost 2 decades. The intrusions were so sophisticated that our systems flagged them as authorized traffic. Ambassador, the humans have been inside our communications networks for years. They may have access to classified information across every assembly department. Torn closed his eyes briefly. The situation was worse than he had imagined. Thank you, Director. Continue your investigation and report all findings directly to me. He turned to face the delegates. We need to understand what we are dealing with. I propose we request a full briefing from Director Chen. If the humans want partnership, they must be willing to demonstrate good faith by explaining their capabilities. The vote passed with only Commander Zex opposing. Within hours, Torn received a response from Earth. Director Chen agreed to a briefing but insisted it take place on Earth's surface. The location was non-negotiable. She wants us on her territory, Zex observed. This is another power play. Or a demonstration of confidence, Counselor Mira suggested. She is showing that Earth has nothing to hide. Torn made the decision. We accept. A small delegation will travel to Earth. The rest will remain here in case this is a trap. 3 days later, Torn found himself standing on Earth for the first time. The location was a facility built into a mountain range in a region humans called Colorado. The building appeared modest from the outside. But as they were led deeper into the complex, Torn realized it was far more extensive than it seemed. Sarah Chen met them in a conference room deep underground. The walls displayed screens showing various locations throughout the galaxy. Torn recognized assembly military bases, diplomatic facilities, and several supposedly secret research stations. Welcome to the Strategic Observation Center, Sarah said. This is where we have been coordinating our galactic monitoring program since its inception. She gestured to the screens. These feeds are live, real-time observation of assembly activities across 63 star systems. We can access communications, track ship movements, and monitor energy signatures from any assembly facility. A man stepped forward, introducing himself as Dr. Michael Torres, Director of Intelligence Operations. He was older than Sarah, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to constantly analyze everything around him. Let me explain how this began, Michael said. When humanity achieved light-speed capability, our first action was to listen. We detected assembly communications within weeks. Within months, we had decoded your primary languages. Within a year, we understood your political structure. He brought up a timeline on the main screen. We immediately recognized a pattern. Every species that made contact with the assembly followed the same path. Initial welcome, gradual integration, complete subordination. Species that resisted faced economic pressure, political isolation, or military intervention. Michael's expression hardened. We decided that humanity would not follow that path, but we also understood that direct confrontation would be futile. You had thousands of years of technological advancement. We had barely escaped our own solar system. So you hid, Torn said quietly. We prepared, Sarah corrected. There is a difference. We made a decision that took considerable courage and discipline. We would delay full integration into galactic society until we understood the rules and developed capabilities. To protect our interests, she walked to another display showing human technological development over 3 decades. We focused on 3 priorities: intelligence gathering, defensive capabilities, and technological advancement in specific areas where we identified assembly weaknesses. What weaknesses? Counselor Mira asked. The assembly has stood for over 1,000 years. Dr. Torres smiled slightly. Complacency, predictability, overconfidence. The assembly operates on assumptions that worked for centuries but have never been seriously challenged. Your military tactics are formal and traditional. Your security systems are sophisticated but inflexible. Your political structure is stable but rigid. He brought up detailed analysis of assembly military operations. Your fleets move in standard formations. Your command structures follow predictable hierarchies. Your communication protocols are complex but consistent. Everything follows established patterns because nothing has forced you to adapt. Another screen activated, showing human ships that looked completely different from the simple vessels assembly surveillance had observed. These were sleek, angular craft with no visible weapons or engines. These are our actual military vessels, Sarah explained. They use propulsion systems based on quantum field manipulation. Weapons that assembly shields were not designed to counter. Stealth capabilities that make them effectively invisible to your sensors. Commander Zex stared at the ships with growing horror. How many of these do you have? Enough, Sarah replied simply. But numbers are not what matters. What matters is that we designed every system specifically to counter assembly capabilities. We studied how you fight and built forces to exploit every weakness we identified. Torn felt his world shifting beneath him. The assembly had believed itself invulnerable, the ultimate authority in the galaxy. Now a species they had dismissed as primitive was demonstrating capabilities that rendered assembly military superiority questionable. Why are you showing us this? He asked. If you wanted to keep these capabilities secret, you could have continued your deception indefinitely. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Because deception is not our goal, Ambassador. Security was our goal. We needed time to develop capabilities that would ensure Earth's sovereignty could not be threatened. We have achieved that goal. Now we can engage with the assembly honestly. She sat down, gesturing for the delegates to do the same. We do not want conflict. We do not want to dominate the galaxy or replace the assembly. We want what every sovereign civilization deserves: respect, equality, and the right to determine our own future. High Priest Kalor leaned forward, his multiple eyes studying Sarah carefully. And if the assembly refuses? If we decide that your deception represents an unacceptable threat? Then you will start a war you cannot win, Sarah replied calmly. Not because we are stronger, but because we have spent 3 decades preparing for exactly that scenario. We know your force deployments, your supply lines, your political divisions. We have contingency plans for every possible assembly response. Dr. Torres added, we have also been quietly establishing relationships with several species that are dissatisfied with assembly leadership. If conflict begins, you may find that internal unity is not as solid as you believe. Torn closed his eyes, feeling the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on him. The assembly had encountered something unprecedented, a species that refused to accept subordinate status and possessed the capability to enforce that refusal. What exactly do you propose? He asked finally. Sarah activated a document on the main screen. We propose restructuring the assembly into a true cooperative federation, equal representation for all member species regardless of military power or technological advancement, transparent decision-making processes, recognition of sovereign rights for all civilizations, and most importantly, an end to forced compliance through intimidation. The assembly will never agree to this, Commander Zex said flatly. We have maintained order for 1,000 years through established hierarchy. Your proposal would destroy everything we have built. Your proposal would destroy a system built on inequality, Sarah corrected. But it would create something better. A galactic community based on mutual respect rather than forced submission. Counselor Mira studied the proposal carefully. Even if some of us support this, many species benefit from the current structure. The powerful will resist losing their advantages. Then they will face a choice, Sarah said. Adapt to a more equitable system, or watch their influence erode as more species follow Earth's example. We are not the only civilization dissatisfied with assembly authority. We are simply the first with the capability to challenge it. Torn stood and walked to the screen showing assembly facilities. You have placed us in an impossible position. Accept your demands and admit that the Assembly's authority is negotiable. Refuse and risk war against an opponent that knows our every weakness. We have placed you in a position to make a choice, Sarah replied. The same choice you have forced upon every species for the last 1,000 years. Accept change or face consequences. The difference is that we are offering partnership rather than domination. The meeting continued for hours. Sarah and her team presented detailed proposals for restructuring Assembly governance, establishing new protocols for interaction between species, and creating transparent oversight mechanisms. Every suggestion was backed by thorough analysis and clear reasoning. Finally, Torn raised his hand for silence. Director Chen, you have given us much to consider. The delegation will return to Assembly chambers to present your proposals. I cannot predict what decision will be made, Sarah nodded. We understand. But Ambassador, there is one more thing you should know. She activated a final display showing hundreds of locations throughout the galaxy. These are the positions of every Assembly military vessel, every intelligence platform, every strategic installation. We are transmitting this information to you as a demonstration of good faith. We want you to understand that we could have used this knowledge to attack. Instead, we are using it to negotiate. Torn stared at the display, feeling a chill run through his body. The humans had complete intelligence on every Assembly military asset. They could have struck without warning, potentially crippling Assembly power before anyone realized what was happening. Instead, they were offering peace. Why? He asked simply. Sarah smiled, and for the first time the expression seemed genuinely warm. Because humanity learned something from our violent history. Victory through destruction is temporary. Victory through cooperation is permanent. We would rather build a better galaxy than rule a conquered one. As the delegates prepared to depart, Torn looked back at Sarah Chen. You terrify me, Director, not because of your weapons or your intelligence capabilities, but because you demonstrated patience and discipline that most species could never achieve. You waited 3 decades to reveal yourselves, knowing that premature action would be disastrous. Sarah met his gaze steadily. Ambassador, we learned to be patient because we had no choice, but patience has rewards. We revealed ourselves when we were ready, on our terms with full understanding of all possible consequences. And what if the Assembly chooses war? Sarah's expression hardened again. Then the galaxy will learn that humans are very good at war. We spent thousands of years perfecting it before we reached the stars. We sincerely hope the Assembly is wise enough to choose the alternative. Torn departed Earth with his mind full of troubling thoughts. The galaxy had changed in ways that most beings would not understand until much later. Humanity had demonstrated that the Assembly's authority was not absolute, that technological superiority could be overcome by careful planning and patient execution. Most importantly, Earth had proven that a species could reach the stars and refuse to kneel. The galaxy would never be the same. The new balance, the Assembly chambers had never been so crowded. Representatives from every member species gathered to hear Ambassador Torn's report on the Earth situation. Additional delegates from non-member civilizations observed from designated areas, drawn by rumors that something significant was happening. Torn stood at the central platform, aware that his next words would shape galactic civilization for generations. He had spent the journey from Earth reviewing every detail, analyzing every implication, and reaching a conclusion that would shock many of his colleagues. Distinguished members, he began, his voice carrying throughout the vast chamber, I have returned from Earth with information that fundamentally changes our understanding of humanity and our assessment of the galactic order. He activated the displays showing Sarah Chen's presentation. The humans have been observing the Assembly for 3 decades. They have infiltrated our networks, positioned observation platforms throughout our space, and developed military capabilities specifically designed to counter our advantages. Gasps and angry shouts erupted across the chamber. Commander Zek stood immediately, his armor gleaming under the lights. This is an act of war. The Assembly must respond with overwhelming force to demonstrate that such deception carries severe consequences. Torn raised his hand for silence. Before anyone advocates for war, you must understand what war with humanity would entail. He displayed the intelligence Earth had shared, complete maps of Assembly military deployments, Communications intercepts and strategic assessments. The humans know everything about us. Ship positions, supply routes, political divisions, technological weaknesses. They have spent 30 years preparing for the possibility of conflict with the Assembly. Counselor Mira leaned forward in her seat. But surely our numerical superiority and technological advancement would prevail in extended conflict. Would it? Torn challenged. The humans have built their entire defense strategy around countering our specific capabilities. They designed weapons to bypass our shields. They developed tactics to exploit our rigid command structures. They established relationships with dissatisfied species who might support them if conflict begins. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Most importantly, they demonstrated patience and discipline that surpasses anything we have encountered. A species that could hide this level of capability for 3 decades while maintaining the appearance of primitive development is not a species we can predict or control. High Priest Kalor rose from his seat, all 4 arms spread in a gesture of concern. What do the humans want? Complete surrender? Dismantling of the Assembly? Neither, Torn replied. They want reform. They propose restructuring the Assembly into a cooperative federation with equal representation for all species. They want transparency in governance, recognition of sovereign rights, and an end to forced compliance through intimidation. Unacceptable, several delegates shouted simultaneously. Torn raised his voice. Is it? For 1,000 years, the Assembly has maintained order through hierarchy and intimidation. We have convinced ourselves that this system is necessary for galactic stability. But what if we are wrong? What if our system creates the very tensions we claim to prevent? He displayed data showing species that had joined the Assembly reluctantly, civilizations that complied with Assembly directives while harboring resentment, and worlds that had been pressured into submission through threat of isolation or military action. The humans are not wrong about Assembly methods, Torn continued. We do force compliance. We do use our technological and military advantages to coerce weaker species. We have built a system where might determines right, and we have justified it by calling it necessary for peace. Commander Zex stepped forward, his voice rising with anger. And what alternative exists? Without Assembly authority, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Weaker species would be exploited by stronger ones. Resources would be contested through violence. The order we have built is the foundation of galactic civilization. Torn met his gaze steadily. The humans propose building a better foundation, one based on cooperation rather than coercion. They suggest that true stability comes from willing partnership, not forced submission. Words Zex dismissed. Easy to say when you possess hidden military capabilities. If we accept their demands, we set a precedent that any species with sufficient power can dictate terms to the Assembly. Is that not precisely what the Assembly already does? Counselor Mira asked quietly. We dictate terms to species based on our power. The humans are simply the first to possess power sufficient to demand equal treatment. The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates supported Torn's assessment, recognizing that humanity represented a new reality the Assembly had to accommodate. Others insisted that yielding to human demands would destroy Assembly authority and invite chaos. As the arguments continued, new information arrived that changed everything. Assembly Intelligence Command transmitted an urgent alert. 7 species had made contact with Earth independently, seeking partnerships outside Assembly oversight. The Niran Collective, a civilization that had joined the Assembly under protest 3 centuries ago, announced they supported Earth's reform proposals. More concerning, several Assembly member species revealed they had been aware of human observation platforms in their territories, but had deliberately not reported them to Assembly authorities. They had been curious about Earth's intentions and had chosen to watch rather than intervene. The revelation stunned the chamber into silence. The Assembly's unity was not as solid as everyone had believed. Seeds of dissent had been growing for decades, possibly centuries, waiting only for someone to give them voice. Torn seized the moment. Distinguished members, we face a choice. We can cling to the old system and risk conflict that will divide the Assembly regardless of the outcome. Or we can accept that change is inevitable and guide that change in constructive directions. He displayed Earth's detailed reform proposals. The humans offer partnership. They propose creating a federation where all species have equal voice in decisions affecting galactic civilization. They suggest transparency in governance, establish protocols for peaceful dispute resolution, and mutual defense agreements based on voluntary cooperation. And if we refuse? Someone asked from the assembled delegates. Torn pulled up the final piece of evidence from Earth. Then they have made contingency plans. They have identified 37 species likely to support reform. They have established the framework for an alternative galactic organization. And they have positioned defensive capabilities throughout the galaxy to protect their interests and those of their potential allies. The implications were clear. If the Assembly refused reform, it would face not just human opposition but the possible emergence of a rival galactic organization. The 1,000-year monopoly on galactic governance would end regardless of what the Assembly decided. The only question was whether that end would come through peaceful transition or destructive conflict. Commander Zek stood rigid, his armor gleaming with barely controlled fury. You ask us to surrender everything our ancestors built. The order, the stability, the civilization we have maintained for a millennium. I ask you to evolve, Torn replied. The universe changes, Commander. Species that refuse to adapt eventually fall regardless of how powerful they were. The humans are offering us a chance to adapt peacefully. The vote was called 3 days later, after endless debates and private negotiations. The measure passed by the narrowest margin in Assembly history. The Galactic Assembly would restructure itself as a cooperative federation with equal representation for all member species. Transparent governance protocols would be established. Forced compliance would be replaced with voluntary cooperation and peaceful dispute resolution. Humanity was granted full membership status as an equal partner, not a subordinate civilization. The announcement shocked the galaxy. For species that had chafed under Assembly authority, it represented hope for genuine change. For others who had benefited from the old system, it represented unwelcome uncertainty. Sarah Chen returned to the Assembly chambers for the formal signing of the new Federation Charter. She stood beside Ambassador Torn as they placed their marks on the document that would reshape galactic civilization. You took an enormous risk, Torn said quietly as they observed the ceremony. Revealing your capabilities could have provoked exactly the conflict you sought to avoid. Sarah smiled. We calculated that transparency at the right moment would be more effective than continued deception. The Assembly needed to understand that we were serious about reform, but also serious about partnership. And if we had chosen war, then we would have fought, Sarah replied simply. But we would have done so with great regret. War is humanity's oldest skill, Ambassador. We have practiced it for thousands of years. But we have also learned that it is rarely the best solution. The ceremony concluded with representatives from 47 species affirming their commitment to the new federation. Within weeks, 12 additional civilizations requested membership under the reformed structure. The galaxy was entering a new era. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the Strategic Observation Center watching reports from across the galaxy. The transition to the new Federation structure was proceeding better than expected. Species were engaging with each other as equals for the first time in centuries. Trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than coercion were being established. Political tensions that had simmered for decades were being resolved through dialogue. Dr. Torres joined her at the observation screens. The Vexari Empire is requesting assistance with a technological problem. They want human engineers to help upgrade their propulsion systems. Sarah raised an eyebrow. The same empire that wanted to dictate terms to us 3 months ago? Times change quickly, Michael observed. Ambassador Torn has become one of our strongest allies. He recognized that cooperation serves his people's interests better than dominance. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Approve the request. Send our best engineers. The faster we demonstrate that partnership produces better results than hierarchy, the faster the new system stabilizes. She turned to face Michael directly. What about the observation platforms? Are we maintaining them? Reduced operations, Michael replied. We are gradually sharing monitoring capabilities with Federation partners. The goal is creating a transparent security network that everyone contributes to and benefits from. Good, Sarah said. The observation network served its purpose, but continuing it in secret would undermine the trust we are trying to build. Over the following year, humanity's integration into galactic civilization accelerated. Human technology and computational systems and materials science was shared with Federation partners. In exchange, humans gained access to advanced medical knowledge, energy generation systems, and centuries of diplomatic experience. More importantly, humanity brought a different perspective to galactic governance. Where other species saw established traditions that must be preserved, humans saw systems that could be improved. Where others accepted limitations as inevitable, humans looked for innovative solutions. The Strategic Defense Initiative, a Federation-wide project based on human concepts, established a network of defensive platforms that protected all member worlds equally. The Technological Exchange Program allowed species to share innovations while protecting intellectual property rights. The Diplomatic Corps, with humans in key positions, developed new protocols for peaceful conflict resolution. Ambassador Torn visited Earth regularly, developing genuine friendship with Sarah and her team. During one visit, he stood with her on the same mountain overlook where she had first revealed human capabilities. "I was terrified of your species," he admitted. "You represented everything the Assembly had never encountered. A civilization that refused to follow the established path." Sarah smiled. "We represented change. Change is always frightening to those who benefit from the existing system. But you were right," Torn continued. "The old system was built on inequality and maintained through intimidation. It worked for centuries, but only because no one had the capability and courage to challenge it. Humanity possessed both." Sarah gazed out at the stars visible in Earth's night sky. "We had an advantage that other species lacked. Our history gave us perspective. We spent millennia conquering and being conquered, building empires and watching them fall. We learned that systems built on domination eventually collapse under their own weight." "Your patience was remarkable," Torn observed. 3 decades of preparation without revealing yourselves. Most species would have acted sooner, either through eagerness or fear." "We had good teachers," Sarah replied. "Earth's history is full of civilizations that acted too quickly and paid terrible prices. We learned that timing matters as much as capability. Revealing ourselves before we were ready would have been disastrous. Waiting too long might have missed the opportunity entirely." Torn nodded slowly. "The Assembly is changing in ways I never imagined possible. Species that barely spoke to each other are now collaborating on projects that benefit everyone. Political tensions that seemed permanent are being resolved through dialogue. Trade has increased by 40% since the Federation restructuring." "And military conflicts?" Sarah asked. "Reduced to near zero," Torn replied with satisfaction. "When species have equal voice in governance and transparent processes for dispute resolution, there is less reason for violence. The old Assembly prevented war through threat of superior force. The new Federation prevents war by addressing the causes of conflict." Sarah turned to face him directly. "Ambassador, can I ask you something personal? When did you decide to support reform? Was it during our first meeting or later?" Torn considered the question carefully. "I think the decision began forming when I first saw your observation platforms. The sophistication required to hide them from Assembly surveillance for over a decade indicated a level of planning that terrified me. But the decision crystallized when you shared complete intelligence on Assembly military assets." "Because we could have attacked?" Sarah asked. "Because you chose not to," Torn replied. "Any species capable of gathering that intelligence could have used it to strike devastating blows against Assembly power. Instead, you offered it as proof of peaceful intentions. That convinced me your proposals were genuine, not tactical deception." He paused, his expression thoughtful. "My species has dominated galactic politics for 2 centuries through military and technological superiority. We convinced ourselves that domination was necessary for stability. You showed us that cooperation produces better results for everyone, including those who previously held power." Sarah smiled. "The transition has not been completely smooth. Some species still resent the changes. Some of your own people oppose your support for reform. Change always creates opposition," Torn acknowledged. "But the benefits are becoming undeniable. My people now have access to human computational technology that has revolutionized our industrial processes. We have partnerships with species we previously viewed as inferiors, and those partnerships are proving remarkably productive." He looked back toward the observation center visible in the distance. "The Strategic Observation Center has become a symbol, you know. Species across the galaxy speak of humanity's 30-year watch. The idea that a civilization could be patient enough to observe for decades before acting has changed how many beings think about strategy and planning. It has also made some species nervous," Sarah observed. "They wonder what else humanity might be preparing in secret. Are you?" Torn asked with a slight smile. Sarah laughed softly. Ambassador, we dismantled most of our secret programs after the Federation restructuring. Transparency works both ways. We cannot demand it from others while maintaining hidden capabilities ourselves. Most programs? Torn noted the qualification. Some capabilities are maintained for genuine security purposes, Sarah admitted. The galaxy is vast and not every civilization is part of the Federation. We would be foolish to completely abandon defensive preparations. Torn nodded, understanding. A reasonable precaution. The Federation does not require naivety, only honesty. They walked together back toward the observation center. Inside, human and alien staff worked side by side, monitoring Federation space and coordinating responses to various situations. A medical emergency in the Vexari sector was being addressed by ships from 3 different species. A resource dispute in the Rim territories was being mediated by a team of human and Selenian diplomats. Dr. Torres met them in the operations center. Director Chen, we have an interesting development. The Korvax remnant has requested Federation membership. Sarah's eyebrows rose. The Korvax were an isolationist species that had avoided all contact with the Assembly for over 5 centuries. What prompted this change? Their message says they have been observing the Federation's first year and are impressed by the results, Michael explained. They specifically mentioned appreciation for the equal representation structure and transparent governance protocols. Torn looked surprised. The Korvax refused every Assembly invitation for centuries. We assumed they would remain isolated indefinitely. The old Assembly represented everything they opposed, Sarah said thoughtfully. Hierarchy, forced compliance, technological intimidation. The new Federation represents something different, something they might actually want to be part of. She made a decision. Accept their application and begin the integration process. But let's move slowly and respect their concerns about maintaining cultural autonomy. They are reaching out after 5 centuries of isolation. We need to ensure they feel welcomed, not pressured. Over the following months, the Korvax integration proceeded smoothly. Their admission to the Federation brought unexpected benefits. The Korvax possessed advanced biological sciences that complemented human technology in surprising ways. Joint research projects began producing innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. More species followed. Civilizations that had remained independent or operated on the fringes of galactic society began seeking Federation membership. Each brought unique capabilities and perspectives that enriched the whole. 5 years after the Federation restructuring, Sarah Chen stood once again in the Assembly Chambers, now officially renamed the Federation Congress. The chamber had been redesigned to reflect new values. Instead of curved rows rising toward a central platform that emphasized hierarchy, the seating was arranged in a circle where all delegates met as equals. She had been elected as Federation Coordinator, a rotating position that managed day-to-day operations while major decisions required consensus among member species. It was her responsibility to present the 5-year progress report. Distinguished members, she began, her voice carrying through translation systems that now included 73 languages. 5 years ago, we fundamentally restructured galactic governance. Many believed the change would create chaos and instability. Instead, we have achieved results that surpass even optimistic projections. She displayed comprehensive data on screens visible throughout the chamber. Federation membership has grown from 47 to 81 species. Trade between member worlds has increased by 230%. Military conflicts have decreased by 94%. Technological advancement through cooperative research has accelerated beyond any previous period in galactic history. The data told a story of transformation. Species that had been adversaries under the old assembly now collaborated on projects benefiting both civilizations. Resources that had been contested through military pressure were now shared through negotiated agreements. Technologies that had been hoarded by powerful species were now exchanged freely, advancing everyone. But the most significant achievement is not measured in statistics, Sarah continued. It is measured in changed perspectives. We have begun building a galactic civilization based on mutual respect rather than enforced hierarchy. Young beings across the galaxy are growing up in a universe where cooperation is normal, not exceptional. She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species. Humanity did not create this transformation alone. Every species here contributed to building something better than what existed before. We simply initiated a conversation that needed to happen. Ambassador Torn, now serving as Federation Military Coordinator, stood to add his perspective. 5 years ago, I feared what humanity represented. I saw a species that refused to follow established patterns, that hid its capabilities, that challenged everything we believed about galactic order. His expression softened. I was wrong to fear. Humanity brought exactly what the galaxy needed: a different perspective, a willingness to question assumptions, and the courage to propose alternatives to systems that no longer served their purpose. He gestured toward Sarah. Director Chen once told me that humanity learned patience from its violent history. I now understand what she meant. A species that has experienced the consequences of premature action, of decisions made through fear rather than wisdom, learns to be careful, to watch, to plan, to act only when ready. Counselor Mira, who had supported reform from the beginning, rose to speak. The Selenian Collective wishes to acknowledge humanity's unique contribution to galactic civilization. You brought not just advanced technology or military capability, but something more valuable: the understanding that strength and cooperation are not opposites. The old assembly believed we must choose between power and peace. Humanity showed us we can have both. The session continued with reports from various Federation initiatives. The medical exchange program had virtually eliminated several diseases that had plagued multiple species for centuries. The environmental restoration project was healing worlds damaged by industrial exploitation during the assembly era. The cultural preservation initiative was documenting and protecting unique traditions from species that had felt pressured to abandon them under the old system. As the session concluded, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. 30 years of patient observation, building capabilities in secret while appearing harmless to potential threats. The calculated risk of revealing themselves at precisely the right moment. The delicate negotiations that had transformed potential conflict into historic reform. Dr. Torres joined her as they watched delegates from dozens of species interacting casually, forming friendships and partnerships that would have been impossible under the old assembly structure. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had revealed ourselves sooner? Michael asked. Or waited longer? Sarah considered the question. Sooner. And we would have lacked the capabilities to back our demands for equal treatment. The assembly would have forced our submission like they did every other species. Later, and the opportunity might have passed. The assembly was beginning to suspect something was different about Earth. Another few years and they might have discovered our preparations. So the timing was perfect? The timing was calculated, Sarah corrected. We made our best assessment of when we would be strong enough to negotiate from a position of strength, but before the assembly discovered our true capabilities. Perfect would imply certainty. We had only probability. Michael nodded thoughtfully. And now, what challenges do you see for the future? Sarah pulled up a star map showing Federation space and surrounding regions. The galaxy is vast. We have transformed governance for 81 species, but thousands more remain outside the Federation. Some are isolated civilizations that have not yet developed space travel. Others are established powers that view Federation principles with suspicion. She highlighted several regions on the map. The Dravian Imperium controls 50 systems through military conquest. They see the Federation as a threat to their expansion plans. The Merchant Collective operates through economic exploitation of weaker species. Our fair trade principles threaten their business model, and there are rumors of ancient civilizations in the deep core that might view any organized galactic civilization as a threat. So the work continues, Michael observed. The work always continues, Sarah agreed. We have built something better than what existed before, but we have not achieved perfection. We have created a system that allows peaceful cooperation, but we must constantly defend it against those who prefer the old ways or seek to establish new hierarchies. She turned to face him directly. But we have advantages now that we lacked 30 years ago. We are not alone. 81 species stand together under principles of equality and cooperation. We have built an alliance based on mutual benefit, not forced compliance. That makes us stronger than the old assembly ever was. Over the following decade, the Federation continued expanding and evolving. Humanity's role gradually shifted from revolutionary catalyst to stable partner. Human innovations continued benefiting galactic civilization, but so did contributions from dozens of other species. The idea that any single civilization was superior to others faded as Cooperative achievements demonstrated the value of diverse perspectives. The strategic observation center transformed from a secret intelligence facility into the Federation Security Coordination Hub, where multiple species worked together monitoring threats and coordinating defensive responses. The observation platforms that had once been hidden throughout the galaxy became shared assets, contributing to collective security rather than serving one species' interests. Sarah Chen eventually stepped down as Federation coordinator, having served 3 terms. She returned to Earth and resumed teaching at the institute that had trained her decades earlier. Her students included humans and aliens alike, all learning the principles of patient strategy and diplomatic innovation that had reshaped galactic civilization. Ambassador Torn, now retired from active service, visited her at the institute. They stood together overlooking the same mountain view where humanity's journey into galactic prominence had been discussed years before. "I have been thinking about legacy," Torn said quietly. "What we leave behind after we are gone." Sarah smiled. "And what conclusion have you reached?" "That the old assembly will be remembered as a necessary stage in galactic development," Torn replied. "It brought order to chaos and prevented countless conflicts, but it will also be remembered for its rigidity and inequality." He turned to face her. "Humanity's legacy will be different. You will be remembered as the species that challenged an unjust system and offered something better. The species that demonstrated patience and preparation, that turned potential enemies into partners, that chose cooperation over conquest, even when conquest was possible." Sarah shook her head gently. "That is too much credit for one species. The Federation's success comes from many civilizations working together. Humanity initiated the conversation, but others made it real through their willingness to change." "Perhaps," Torn acknowledged. "But someone had to start that conversation. Someone had to have the courage to say that the established order was not the only possibility. Humanity did that, and the galaxy is better for it." They stood in comfortable silence, watching stars appear as Earth's sun set behind the mountains. Somewhere in that vast darkness, thousands of worlds were home to beings living in peace, cooperating across species boundaries, building futures together that would have been impossible under the old system. Humanity had reached for the stars and found not just new worlds to explore, but the opportunity to help build a better civilization for everyone. They had watched and waited, prepared and planned, and finally acted at exactly the right moment to change galactic history. The silent watchers had spoken, and the universe had listened, and in listening, it had transformed into something better than anyone had imagined possible. Comment for next part.